He didn't recoil like a frightened puppy, he tensed like a soldier expecting the hit. The Colorado Springs shelter buzzed with barking and the metallic clang of tails hitting fencing. Sunlight streamed down through high windows. Volunteers wore polite smiles. The place smelled like bleach and nervous energy. In the far corner of one kennel, a 6-month-old German shepherd named Monty hunched low, shivering so badly his water dish trembled. I stopped mid-step. He wasn't barking, wasn't whining. He was locked in place. One front paw curled under him like he was guarding an old hurt. His fur, once proud black and tan, was clumped and dull near his ribs. His eyes were something else, glassy, deep, too human. They didn't shift, didn't blink. I exhaled slowly. "Easy, buddy," I murmured, easing into a lower stance. Hands down, shoulders soft, the same posture I'd used when approaching kids after explosions. Don't startle, don't rush. Let them come to you. But Monty didn't come. He just stared. Then, as if my voice alone was pain, he flinched again. A young staff member, Crystal, walked up behind me. "That's Monty. Someone dumped him last month behind a boarded-up gas station. Took hours to catch him, kept hiding in garbage piles. He's different." I asked the question anyway. "Anyone come for him?" She shook her head. "No, only one he lets closes the night cleaner. And that's only if she sings." I looked back. A puppy, barely 6 months old, already treating life like it had written him off, and he'd agreed. I wasn't there to adopt. I was just picking up blankets for a veteran drive. Still, the words slipped out before I could stop. "Then what if I just took him for the weekend?" She blinked. "You're approved for fostering." I wasn't, but somehow, 20 minutes later, I was walking out with a leash in hand and a trembling Monty at my side. No crate, no tail wag. Just quiet steps and unblinking eyes that wouldn't stop watching me. In the car, he didn't look out the window. Didn't sniff. He curled into a tight ball on the floor like he wished he could vanish. "You're safe now," I said gently. "No one's going to hurt you." No response. At home, he froze at the front door. Refused to step inside. I backed up, loosened the leash. He stood there still for nearly 5 minutes before inching one paw forward, then another. Straight under the kitchen table, that's where he stayed. I slid down the wall and sat on the floor nearby. Didn't talk, didn't move, just waited. Both of us quiet, both unsure what came next. A 6-month-old German shepherd, scared of doorways and bowls, sleeping at my feet like he didn't trust the ground to hold. I'd been out of the army 10 months. Thought I'd seen what broken looked like. But Monty was different. I barely slept that night. Not because of noise, he made none. I was just tuned in, listening for him. Every creak, every shift in air had me half rising, thinking he'd run. But he didn't. He stayed under the table. At 2:17 a.m., I heard one soft whimper. Not a cry, more like something leaking out. I didn't move, didn't speak. Just whispered, "Me too," let the quiet return. In the morning, the food bowl was untouched. Same with the water. When I entered the kitchen, he pressed himself tighter into the corner, like maybe the wall would open and let him disappear. I crouched slowly, eyes averted, and nudged the bowl closer. "It's okay," I said. "You don't have to trust me. Just don't quit." Still nothing. I poured myself coffee, sat above him with a book I knew I wouldn't read. Just giving him space. 30 minutes passed, then 60. I didn't move, then there it was a lick, then another. I didn't look. By the time the coffee was gone, the bowl was half empty. When I stood, he flinched, but slower now. Less fear, more memory. I said nothing. Let him be. That afternoon, I opened the back door and walked away. Didn't call him. Left the path open. A few minutes later, I heard cautious steps. The faint squeak of the screen door easing open. He stood there, just inside the threshold, like the outside world might be a trick. I sat on the steps, back to him, watching the wind stir the trees. "Come on, Monty," I said quietly. "It's just wind, no noise." A soft pad hit the deck. I didn't turn, but I smiled. The sun hit his coat for the first time. The black and tan shimmered like something he didn't know he had the right to wear. He sniffed the grass, took 2 steps. A dog barked nearby. Monty bolted back inside. Straight under the table. I didn't chase, didn't scold. I knew what it meant to be scared enough to run from the breeze. That night, I placed his dinner dish just outside the kitchen, closer to the living room. A test. I sat on the couch, pretending to read. He didn't move until I turned off the lamp. Then light footfalls, the quiet clink of kibble against metal. One step farther than yesterday. It didn't look like much. But to me, it meant everything. I didn't realize he'd been watching me until I dropped a spoon. It clanged on the floor and I flinched, reflexes I hadn't shaken. And when I looked up, Monty was peeking out from behind the table leg. Ears up just a little, his body didn't retreat. "Hey," I said softly, kneeling to grab the spoon. "Guess we both." Spook easy. He didn't run, he didn't hide. That, in itself, was a win. After that I started talking to him more. Not orders. Just stories, thoughts, things I hadn't said out loud in years. I told him about the monsoon in Kandahar. How my boots stayed soaked for 3 days. About the friend I lost the week. I've been talking to him more. Not commands, just stories. Fragments of my life I hadn't said aloud in years. I told him about my last week overseas, the buddy I lost, the monsoon that soaked my boots until they squished for 3 days straight. I talked about my mom's pot roast and how I still couldn't make rice without burning it. He didn't flinch. He just listened, still hiding in the shadows. On the 4th day, while I was making eggs, I felt something brush the back of my calf. Nearly dropped the pan. I turned and Monty was there. Tail low but not tucked. Head dipped, eyes watching. I froze. I slowly dropped to one knee and hovered my hand, not reaching, just offering. He sniffed it once. Then sut, not close, not touching. Just near enough to say he was thinking about trust. "There you are," I whispered. He blinked. That afternoon I pulled the leash out and placed it on the floor. He looked at it like it might bite. I didn't coax, didn't beg. Just let it stay, part of the room. By morning, he sniffed it. On the 3rd day, he pawed it once, then looked at me. That was all the green light I needed. We walked the driveway side by side. No tension, no struggle. Just quiet steps and uncertain glances. A neighbor walked past, gave me a nod. "New pup?" he asked. "Fostering," I replied. "His name's Monty," the man smiled. "Handsome." "Shepherd," I nodded. "Yeah, just needs time." A car passed and Monty pressed against my leg. A faint tremble ran through him. You'd miss it if you didn't know what to feel for. But he didn't bolt, didn't break, he stayed. That night he followed me to the hallway and laid down outside my room. Didn't try to enter. Just curled up, breathing slow and steady. Like he was keeping watch for both of us. I didn't sleep much. But I didn't feel alone. That sound, his breathing, became routine. Gentle, even, just outside my door. Every night for a week he claimed the same spot. Curled tight like he still wanted to vanish. But he didn't vanish, he stayed. One morning I opened the door and found him sitting, alert, waiting, his ears perked. His eyes had a flicker, still dim, but lit. "Morning," I said, and he tilted his head like he wanted to understand. I left the door open after that. He never came in, but sometimes I'd see his shadow cross the line, testing the space. During breakfast, he'd sit near the kitchen doorway. Not under the table anymore, not hiding. Just there, watching, learning. I learned him too. Loud TVs startled him. The dishwasher made him uneasy. The blender? Immediate flinch. But thunder didn't bother him. Fireworks he ignored. A plastic bag crinkling, though, that sent him diving under furniture. I didn't ask why. I just made note of it. On the 11th day, the shelter called. They wanted to know if I'd be bringing him back or extending the foster. I looked down, Monty asleep with his head on my boot, and said, "He's not going anywhere." They laughed. "Figured," Crystal said. "He chose you." I wanted to believe that, but maybe we just both stopped running. That afternoon, I opened the truck door. Same one we'd driven home in. He froze. Locked all 4 paws to the concrete. Breath shallow, eyes wide. "No pressure," I told him. "Just a ride." I climbed into the driver's seat and waited. 10 minutes. 15. Then, without a sound, he jumped in. One smooth move. No flinch, no delay. But when I looked over, his whole body was shaking. I started the truck. No bark, no whimper. He just curled into a ball and pressed himself against the door. I drove slow, just a loop around the block. He didn't lift his head, but he stayed. When we got back, I opened the door. He didn't bolt, he waited, watched me step out first, then followed. Inside, we walked without words, without a leash. That night, I found him curled at the foot of my bed. He looked up once, then let out a slow breath and laid his head back down. Like maybe, just maybe, he believed we were staying. At 3 a.m., I woke up gasping, heart hammering, sweat cold on my skin. I knew where I was, but everything in me felt misplaced. Panic crawled into my chest and settled like it had been waiting by the door before I even picked up the leash, not pacing, just waiting, present. I think he'd learned the routine before I even realized we had one. We walked. Every morning, same loop, same soft silence, like we were both figuring out how to breathe again. One morning, halfway down the block, a kid on a skateboard came flying out of a driveway. The wheels screeched. Monty startled, body low, eyes wild. I felt the leash pull tight, but I didn't tug. I just stopped, knelt down, and waited. He didn't run, didn't drop, just looked at me, trembling. I held out my hand. "Still here," I said. After a long pause, he stepped forward. That night, he didn't sleep at the foot of the bed. He climbed up, slowly, like he thought it might vanish if he moved too fast. He lay beside me, his spine pressed to mine. I didn't move for hours. I didn't want him to think the space wasn't his. I whispered, "You're safe here." I don't know if he understood the words, but I know he stayed. Some mornings I'd find him dreaming, paws twitching, little huffs escaping his nose. I always wondered what he saw, what he remembered, and if it hurt. I hoped quietly that one day his dreams would be soft ones. By the end of the month, he knew his name. Not just heard it, knew it. I'd say Monty, and his ears would perk, his tail give a slow sweep, like he was learning that a name didn't have to come with fear. At the park, he no longer flinched when kids laughed. He still kept his distance, but the tension had faded. One day, a little girl dropped her stuffed bunny near our bench. Monty watched her pick it up, and to my surprise, he stood and sniffed the air toward her. Didn't approach, but didn't retreat either. I felt something shift in me too. We weren't healing fast. We weren't healing all the way, but we were healing together. He started greeting me at the door when I came home, tail swaying low, ears forward. He still didn't bark, but sometimes when I said, "Hey buddy," I'd hear the softest whine, like a whisper he didn't know he had. On cold mornings, I'd find him curled on the rug near the heater vent, nose tucked under his tail. I'd sit beside him with coffee, and we'd watch the sun come up without saying a word. That kind of peace, it doesn't come loud. It comes in slow inches. The training classes got better. Darren noticed it too. "He's watching you more," he said, "like he's starting to trust the space between you." And he was. Monty no longer scanned the room like he was looking for the nearest exit. He looked at me for cues, for calm, for safety. One day, mid-session, I dropped the leash by accident. It clattered to the floor. Monty didn't flinch. He just sat, steady, watching me with those steady eyes like he was saying, "I know you've got me." And he was right. Later that week, I took him on a trail we hadn't walked before. New smells, new sounds. He stayed close but not tense. When a squirrel darted across the path, he took one bounding step and then stopped, looked back at me, and trotted back. I laughed, surprised by the choice he made. "Good boy," I said. He sat by my side, tongue out, tail thumping the ground once. Not excitement, just joy. That night, for the first time, he fell asleep with his head on my chest. I listened too. His breathing, slow and even. And I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, I was safe too. My written section. She said, "We usually don't fast-track candidates. But this dog, from what you've described, he's already doing the work." I didn't know what to say. I stared at the phone in my hand, then over at Monty, who was watching me from the hallway, tail gently swaying once like he knew. The coordinator gave me the dates for the evaluation, told me what to expect, said it wouldn't be easy, but they'd guide us. I said yes before my brain could argue. After the call, I sat on the floor and Monty padded over, sat right in front of me and licked the tip of my nose. The night before our first official evaluation, I'd barely slept. Old habits. My chest kept tightening like I was going into battle. But Monty? He slept curled at my feet as if nothing had changed. Maybe for him, nothing had. Maybe he already knew who he was becoming, and I was just catching up. At the center, the evaluator, a woman named Carla, watched Monty closely from the moment we stepped in. He walked at my heel, checked in with me at every pause. We went through obedience drills, noise distractions, unfamiliar surfaces. At one point, she dropped a clipboard with a loud crack. Monty startled but stayed. Ears back, body low but eyes on me, Carla nodded. He's got a solid bond with you. That matters more than perfection. The final test was a simulation, me pretending to have a stress response while seated in a quiet room. They told me to let it happen naturally, not to fake it. I didn't have to. Just sitting there, remembering letting the silence press in was enough. My breath got shallow, my chest clenched. I started to shake. And Monty, without cue, got up, walked over, and placed both paws on my knees. His head rested gently on my thigh. I buried my face in his neck and the shaking eased. When the evaluator came back in, her voice was soft. You two are already a team, I nodded, wiping my eyes. We just didn't know it had a name. The following week, we started the official training. More structure, more precision, more responsibility. Monty took to it like he'd been waiting his whole life to be told he mattered. He wore his training vest with quiet pride. People stopped us in public sometimes. Is he in training? They ask. I'd nod. And every time I wanted to say so, and my months passed. Monty learned to block gently, standing between me and approaching strangers. He learned deep pressure therapy, resting his weight across my legs when the world got too loud. He knew how to find the exit in crowded rooms, how to circle behind me without being told, just in case. But more than that, he learned me, my patterns, my silences. The difference between me being quiet and me being not okay. He caught it before I even knew it was happening. One night during a thunderstorm, the kind that used to wreck me with sound and memory, I sat curled on the edge of the bed, hands tight around a pillow. Monty climbed up, pressed his body into mine, heart steady, calm like a tide. We sat there for hours. When the thunder passed, so did the panic. Not gone, just smaller. Easier to name. Easier to hold. The first time I wore my uniform again for a memorial event, my hands shook as I pulled it from the closet. Monty sat nearby watching. I dressed slowly, heart racing. But when I clicked on the last button and looked down, he was there, sitting tall, vest on, eyes locked on mine. We've got this, he seemed to say. And we did. I don't tell people Monty saved my life. Not out loud, because it's more than that. He returned it to me. In pieces and steps and shared breaths and quiet mornings and all the things I thought I'd lost forever. I'm not who I was before. He isn't either. But somehow, together, we became something whole. Her mom whispered something. Maybe about not touching service animals, but the girl kept watching. Monty didn't notice. Or maybe he did, but chose not to react. His focus was on me. Every step, every pause. I stopped near the paint aisle, overwhelmed for a second by the sheer noise of it all. A loudspeaker crackled overhead. Monty leaned in gently, his side pressing against my leg. No command, just presence. We made it through checkout. My knuckles white on the cart handle, but Monty? Solid, unshaken. As we stepped outside, I realized something strange. I hadn't dissociated. Not once. I'd been there, the whole time. That hadn't happened in years. I looked down at him, and he looked up at me like it was no big deal. Just another walk? Just another mission? That night, as I hung his vest on the hook by the door, I ran my fingers across the lettering again. PTSD, service dog. I thought of all the nights I couldn't sleep, all the flashbacks, all the guilt that clawed its way up my throat in silence. And I thought of Monty, his silent watch, his steady wait, the way he never once asked for anything in return. He's not just a service dog. He's a sentinel, my shadow, my anchor. A witness to the quiet battles I fight when no one else sees. Sometimes people ask what kind of training he had, what it took to get him certified. I tell them the truth. He had the right heart. The training just gave it structure. We still walk that same pine trail in the mornings. He still sits by the door before I pick up the leash. But now, when we pass other people, veterans, parents, hikers, I watch their eyes land on Monty's vest. Some nod, some smile with a kind of reverence. And every now and then someone stops and says, "Thank you for your service." And I always answer the same way. I'm just the guy holding the leash. He's the one doing the real work. The mother answered gently, "He's a German Shepherd puppy, sweetie." But he's working. So we don't pet. Monty didn't glance their way. His focus stayed locked on me. Every step, every turn steady, attentive, aware. I hadn't realized just how much tension I carried into public places until that day, but Monty noticed. Every time I tensed up, he'd edge a little closer. If I paused in an aisle, he'd lean ever so slightly into my leg. No barking, no fuss, just steady presence. At the checkout, the cashier leaned in and said, "He's incredible. You must have spent years training him." I smiled. He trained me. Outside, I opened the passenger door and Monty waited. I tapped the seat, and he hopped in with grace, settled, and stared through the windshield like he was scanning the way ahead. We didn't talk on the drive home, but the quiet was full, peaceful, that night. I opened an email I'd been avoiding for months, an invitation from a local veterans outreach center. They were starting a mentorship program, pairing vets with support animals. They needed volunteers. I stared at the screen, unsure. The idea of walking into a room full of strangers, even fellow vets, still clenched my chest. Monty lay at my feet, head on his paws, watching me quietly from beneath the table. "Think we could help someone else?" I asked. He didn't move. He didn't have to. The next morning, we stepped through the doors of the center together. Me in jeans and a worn hoodie, Monty in his vest. Heads turned. Someone murmured, "That's the dog from the Evels." In the corner sat a man late 30s, tattooed arms, hollow eyes worn from too many sleepless nights. He locked eyes with Monty. Monty looked back, then calmly walked to him. Silent, steady. The man stared for a while, then whispered something. I couldn't hear. Monty didn't flinch. Later, the man approached me and asked, "What's his name?" "Monty," he nodded. I haven't touched a dog in 7 years. Monty didn't mind. I shook his hand. That's when I realized this wasn't just about me anymore. Monty wasn't just my lifeline. He was becoming something more. We kept returning every Thursday afternoon. No big entrance, no announcements. Just quiet steps and steady presence. Some of the guys barely spoke. Others couldn't stop talking. Some laughed too much, some not at all. But all of them watched Monty, at first from afar, then from across the room. And little by little, they reached out, a pat on his back. Scratch behind the ear. A soft good boy, like they weren't sure it was allowed. Monty met each gesture the same way he met me, calm, grounding, present. That was enough. Ben, one of the regulars, sat in the corner for 3 weeks without saying a word. On the 4th, he asked if he could take Monty to the courtyard. I nodded. They were gone 15 minutes. When they came back, Ben's eyes were red. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. Later, I saw him standing beside Monty, one hand on the vest, the other holding a cigarette burned all the way down without a single drag. He's more than a dog, Ben said. I nodded. He's a soldier like us. That weekend, I built Monty a raised bed beside mine. Not because he needed it, because I wanted him close. That night he climbed up without hesitation, curled into the shape of trust, pressed his back against my leg, and let out a deep breath like he finally knew he was home. I slept 8 hours straight for the first time in 2 years. The next morning, a local news outlet called. Someone from the center had shared our story. They wanted to feature Monty in a segment on service animals and healing. My instinct was to say no. I didn't want the spotlight. Didn't want to explain. But I looked at Monty head resting on. His paws, ears flicking at birds outside the window, and thought of all the vets still waking up in the dark. Alone. Yeah, I said. We'll do it. The interview was simple. I talked about the beginning, the flinching, the silence, the first night he saved me. The reporter asked, "When did you know he was different?" I didn't hesitate. The night I couldn't breathe, and he made me stay. Monty sat beside me, calm and quiet, wearing his vest with that same steady gaze. After it aired, the messages started coming. From other vets, from families, from shelters. People saying they'd lost hope. That they didn't think dogs like Monty existed. That maybe they'd finally go visit a rescue. I read every message, some aloud, some twice. Monty never reacted to the noise or attention. But one night as I sat by the fire pit watching sparks rise to the stars, he walked over and gently placed his paw on my knee. No words, just the same message he's always given me. I'm here, we're okay. And for the first time, I believed him. Monty's journey from abandoned pup to calm guardian shows just how much nonprofit rescues matter. Caring for a dog like Monty isn't just love, it's commitment, it's responsibility. Monty didn't just change my life. He gave it back to me. I used to think rescue was a one-way street. You save the dog, you give them a second chance, but sometimes it's the dog pulling you out of the fire. Monty was dumped behind a gas station, shaking, silent, forgotten. Now, he walks into rooms full of combat veterans and brings calm. He anchors me when the nightmares return. He leans into people's brokenness without fear. He's not just a German shepherd in a vest. He's a healer, a soldier in his own way. And every time I see him curl into the lap of someone who thought they'd never feel safe again, I remember. That night, the panic, the weight, the quiet paw on my chest. He didn't ask me to trust him. He showed me how. Right now, somewhere there's another puppy shaking in a shelter. And somewhere else, another soldier waking up, gasping in the dark. What if they found each other? What if we helped make that happen? If Monty's story touched you, don't keep it to yourself. Every view, every share, every comment connects someone to a second chance. To a dog like him. To hope. Join our Brave Paws family. Be their voice. Be their hope.